Hey everybody, Eric Dorward here with the Spartan Rocketry Club, continuing our build of the Estes Pro Series version of the Nike Smoke. I didn't fully expect to be making this video right now, but I figured there are some things that should probably be done with this before we actually get to the finishing step. Nothing's actually happened since the last video, so let's get right down to it. Everything's cured at this point and all that, so the epoxy is as good as it's going to get. I am going to put the holes in for the rail buttons now, so I'm going to drill them out. I have my fairly ancient drill here. This is my grandfather's, so it is vintage. I have this is 11/64 inch bit. What was it, 3/16 was a little too big, I think. So this one I found to work the best with the rail buttons here, which, I mean, they don't actually say what size hole you should drill, so I kind of experimented with previous models until I found one that gives me the size I want. So I'm gonna, remember, I piloted these with just a push pin, so that's at least good enough to tell me where I want the hole. So I've got the drill bit in place. I'm just going to very slowly drill into this. There we go. Now that is a mess, alright, so I will need to clean that up. Repeat the process down here. This one you have to be extra careful about because there is not much material to work with, and yeah, it's also very unbalanced. So that's taken care of. Well, at least the hole is drilled anyway. Let's get that unplugged and powered down before I do anything else. Lovely. Alright, so I should really make sure that the button actually fits through. So again, here's the button. Normally it would be coming up from underneath, but going down is easier to do, so I am going to just push it through, make sure it actually fits there. Same deal over here. This one is difficult to do because you're going to have to go from inside the tube and push out, but so long as it fits in one direction, it should fit the other way. It's actually going to be a little bit harder from the other direction because of the way I drilled the hole, but so long as the hole is big enough, and test fitting it like that is helpful because it makes sure that the hole fits, and it does kind of push out stuff that could get in the way. So I'm going to sand around this. This is not particularly clean right now. Alright. The button will cover some of it up, but it'd be nice to have this looking fairly decent. If you really wanted to, you could try to sand the inside of it as well. I don't think I would really recommend that. It would be rather unpleasant. I'm going to grab my hobby knife here and just kind of stuff like the fuzz from sanding this. So it is just a glorified paper tube, right? The dust was kind of clogging up that hole, so it's kind of annoying. Alright, that'll have to do. Now this one, like I said, is quite fragile because there's so little material here. This is a nice thick tube, of course, but there isn't much extra. So yeah, do be careful with that. I'm going to do a little bit of sanding on the underside here. Kind of smooth that out. And alright. Lovely. Alright. Other things that need to happen, or don't need to happen, but I decided I wanted them to happen. So when I was putting the motor mount in, so down under here, I thought it would be nice to put an epoxy ring around this to reinforce it. That didn't happen for a variety of reasons, not the least of which being I didn't have a lot of spare epoxy, which seems to be a little bit of epoxy goop on this fin. That's interesting. That you can kind of scratch off, fortunately. Anyway, so instead I'm going to break out the last vestiges here of my epoxy clay. And before I do that, of course, even though it's clay, it is epoxy clay, so I'm going to don some protective gloves. Oops, it'd probably help if I put my thumb in the thumb hole. There we go. So this stuff comes in a cylinder like this. I don't particularly love this kind. There are other kinds that are probably more suited for rocketry, but you'd have to special order them. This stuff I at least could find in the hardware store, pretty readily available. Anyway, it is just like the regular epoxy. It's a binary, so when we unroll things here, this is probably going to be it for this. There isn't much left and it is getting hard. You can see it's two different colors. Well, that's the binary. So I'm going to just chop some of this, just like half or so. That's probably more than I need, but whatever. Like I said, this is probably it for this batch, because there's not very much left. I mean, I'll seal it up, but I kind of get the feeling that that's probably it. Anyway, back in the container you go. The way this stuff works is you mush it together and you mix the light part with the dark part. And in doing so, you will create the epoxy part, and the clay is just there as, I don't know, filler. So you can see as you mush this together, the parts are getting, they're getting mixed, but they're largely still obvious stripes of the dark gray and the very light gray. This stuff, part of the reason, I like the concept of this, but I don't really love it to work with because it is tough on the gloves. So, when I'm working, I have used this to make fillets in the past. It's a good choice to make fillets. But the problem with making fillets with this is this particular brand is, I think, too, I don't know, it's a little on the rough side of things. It is, it's not very smooth. And every time that I have to touch it, I end up, see my gloves get all crinkled. That's probably partially the gloves too, but in any event, those crinkles don't go away. And while in theory you can sand this, I have not had particularly good luck sanding it. It doesn't like to sand, at least that is my experience. Alright, so what I'm going to do with this is I am just going to make a nice clay snake, preschool style, and I'm going to use this to reinforce the joint, this joint, by just kind of cramming it in there. So I'm actually going to take a moment and I am going to, I don't really need that. But you might want to put the flange part of the rail button in the underside so you know where it goes. I'm just going to avoid that spot, honestly. I think it'll be just fine if I don't put any of the clay there at all. This is probably more clay than I need, which is probably a good thing. So I think I have a pretty good length of this, but yeah, it looks like it needs to go a little bit farther. I can't show you, so it's a little short. I could make this a little bit longer, probably should. Again, preschool style. Just roll out that snake. You want it to be nice and consistent, consistent thickness. Again, my goal here is I'm going to avoid where the button goes. So I'm going to leave, and you can see that drilling this has deformed it a little bit. which is unfortunate, but kind of unavoidable. Anyway, so this is plenty of space here, leaving like, I don't know, 1/4 inch on either side. So that's plenty. And I'm just going to smush this in like so. You can see as I'm doing this, this is the problem that I mentioned before. Imagine that this is a fillet, an aerodynamic fillet on the outside, and I'm creating these creases and seams and cracklies in it. It's because my glove is developing them. So I typically get like a few good ones, but then there's a big old seam from the glove, and nobody wants that. Certainly not in an aerodynamic part. This part, on the other hand, is not aerodynamic. It is essentially inside the rocket, so it doesn't really matter all that much. Alright, so that's good enough. Now, I thought about doing the same thing for the end of the motor mount is about here on the inside. You could certainly do the same thing and put one of these on the inside down there, but I can't reach that far, for one thing. So I'd kind of have to get lucky by kind of fishing it down in there and then using a very long rod to push it into place. I don't really think it's worth it. We did use epoxy on the inside anyway, so it's probably good enough, one would hope. And hopefully this ring makes up for whatever we didn't get. Alright, so that's good enough with the epoxy. I can lose the gloves. Gloves go in the trash. Yes. Alright, the last thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to put the glue fillet on this. I'm going to have a look here too if there are a couple little spots here of this is epoxy that didn't really get into where it belonged. It just kind of bubbled out. So if there are any obvious things like that, I can scrape them off. It's strong stuff, but you can scrape it. Meanwhile, I am just going to put a sizable glue fillet into these cracks. This is, like I said, you could use epoxy clay for this if you wanted to. It would certainly be stronger, but I don't think it'll add all that much. Now the glue itself is not adding any meaningful strength here at all because it's not going to bond very well between the plastic and the fin or the tube material, but it's at least going to fill in any cracks for aerodynamic qualities. Having it smoothed in with my finger the way it is, it should make the transition between the fin and the rocket body a little bit more aerodynamic. So I think that's the main reason I'm going to be doing this, rather than, that wasn't very good at all, than saying, oh, it is much stronger now. There's no way that this fillet made out of wood glue is going to add any appreciable strength, one would think, to the main joint that I made using epoxy, which is of course way stronger than my wood glue. One of these joints to remember was the fin didn't quite settle as far down for whatever reason as it was probably supposed to, so there was some kind of a gap. It's still a gap filled with epoxy, so it's strong. It just doesn't quite look as good as it should. And it might not be as strong as it should be either, but I wouldn't worry about that too much. And I think that using this glue fillet is more about fixing the aerodynamic issues there than anything else. In retrospect, actually, this seems to have settled pretty well. So while there might be some gap, it's not, it might look like there's one because the epoxy is clear, more or less, at least translucent, but I don't think there's any structural issue that I'm really addressing here other than the aerodynamics. Alright, I could do, I don't know, I don't see any point in putting fillet around the launch lugs. I don't think it makes any real difference. So we'll say that's good enough for that. The construction is basically done at this point. I'm not going to take the time to do this on camera because it's not that interesting. I am going to put a layer of sanding sealer around the grain of the, not the grain, the spiral of the tube. The spiral doesn't look bad, honestly. So, yeah, it is noticeable enough. So I'm going to just brush that on, sand it down, and then put the primer on. So that's where I will likely pick up the next video. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you then.